Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. Thank you for joining. This is Scott Holzoffel with enosiX, and we appreciate your time and attention on this webinar. Thanks again for joining. Today what we're going to do is talk about real-time integration between Salesforce CPQ and SAP Variant Config. First, let's start with introductions. Again, my name is Scott Holzoffel. I'm VP of Sales and Marketing, and been with enosiX for about 1.5 years. Prior to that, I was with Salesforce for 3.5 years and was a VP of Sales in the Enterprise Business Unit. Eric?
Yeah, hey, good morning, evening, afternoon. This is Eric Pilgrim. I'm a solutions architect with enosiX. I helped develop a large portion of the Salesforce framework and a lot of the Visualforce pages that we utilize in our enterprise product, as well as this variant configuration piece.
Hello, this is Alex Joseph, VP of Solution Engineering. I was formerly with IBM in their SAP practice. I've been in the SAP space for about 17 some years. Glad to meet you all.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to just talk through our solution at a high level and then pretty quickly get into a demo. If you do have any questions, over on the GoToMeeting, GoToWebinar toolbar, there is a Q&A section and we'll handle those at the end. So just please let us know if there's anything you would like to discuss. So the slide you're looking at, this is the Taj Mahal for Legos. It is the largest Lego set commercially available in the world. There's like 6,000 pieces. And so as you can imagine, even with an instruction booklet, this would take a long time to put together. So then imagine if I showed you the model and I gave you the same set of Legos, but no instruction booklet. So basically you would have to replicate everything that you see and you have to take it apart piece by piece and try to put it back together. Or even worse, imagine I just gave you a pile of Legos, the same set, with no model to look at. And in either case, it's somewhat analogous to what people are tackling when they try to integrate with SAP Variant Config. You have a lot of technical debt with these big implementations. They're hard to replicate, they're hard to undo, they're hard to unwind, they're often undocumented. And so clients and companies are struggling with the integration because there's so much complexity wrapped up in VC that rebuilding and integrating with it is extremely challenging. So could it be done? Sure, but it's just going to take a long time. So if we think about the integration options, it really boils down to two. Replication, so basically mirroring what you have in SAP VC in another system, but there's so many challenges with that. One, you have to dual maintain, so then there's room for error. And we've talked to a lot of clients that are going down this path. They've got dedicated resources. It's expensive, and errors become costly. So not only do you need people to do the dual maintenance, but one small error can greatly impact your revenue or your gross margin, which is not a position you want to be in. The other option is where enosiX falls, and this is our real-time integration. And so what I mean by this is that what we're doing is we're not replicating all the logic. If you think about what's in SAP VC, you've got thousands of characteristics, dependencies, constraints, preconditions, procedures, selection criteria, and on and on and on. The possibilities are endless, millions and millions of combos. And so to recode all that, as we discussed, is an extremely high risk and high effort. So what we do is we leverage all of the complexity of VC in real time through our enosiX toolset, which we'll show you. And that way you don't have to go and recode everything. We're leveraging the strength of SAP, which is all the technical debt that you've already incurred, but then we're making it available in CPQ so that you can use the latest and greatest technology from configure, price, and quote. And then the other thing is that SAP, when they do the pricing, they use sort of a multi-pass approach, which has multiple layers of pricing, whereas the Salesforce approach has more of a waterfall. So again, we're allowing you to leverage the best of SAP without having to rewrite or replicate that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn it over to Alex, who's going to just walk through how our solution works, and then we'll hand it over to Eric for a demo.
So here is typically how the scenario would be laid out. Please understand that it doesn't have to be set up this way, and this is how the demo is going to flow. But understand that there is a lot of overlapping functionality between Salesforce CPQ and SAP Variant Configuration. That being said, we can architect that integration the way it best suits your business process. So it doesn't have to be done this way. You could maintain the price book in Salesforce CPQ or keep it in SAP. And the way we are architected the solution right now, the way you're going to see it is where the product's going to be configured in CPQ, while adhering to the SAP variant configuration rules, underlying characteristics, dependencies, and constraints. And it's going to do all those validations as we configure the product. From that point on, that is going to get stored into the Salesforce CPQ code, and then you would be able to leverage the standard Salesforce CPQ functionality to generate the proposal, create the PDF document, manage the contract perhaps, and then also create the order. And as you're going through this process, you'll also see that we are leveraging the SAP pricing, simulating SAP pricing in real time, right? So not just bringing back the list price of the product, but running through the entire pricing procedure, whether it's customer specific pricing, whether you have volume discounts, and all the underlying pricing for the configurable products. And then lastly, you'll see we create the, that's the piece that we're not showing you today. We're only going to be taking it up to the point of the code creation, but know that we are also able to create the order and then also push that order into SAP and for subsequent delivery and invoicing as well. So, and at that point in time, we are also able to check SAP inventory levels. You're able to look at the delivery scheduling, and if the product has to be procured, it's going to generate the necessary purchase orders and so on and so forth. So without further ado, let's switch over to Eric, and he's going to show you how this actually works in the system.
Great, thank you, Alex.
All right, so prior to actually just jumping directly into the demo, I wanted to walk through the process a little bit first. It's a unique process because it's a unique problem to solve what we're doing here. So essentially, what we're doing is starting off with a standard Salesforce product. That's the same kind of product that you would have configured inside of Salesforce just on a normal instance. The difference is when we link up to SAP materials, we actually add an additional custom field. So we have a reference to a object in SAP, all the while, so we can go and fetch pricing information and also ensure that we can get correct configuration options. So from that product page, actually the product detail page, we're going to go in depth to configure that using variant configuration. This is 100% real time, and I want to stress that all the values are coming back. The characteristics and values are coming back 100% live in real time. This is important, especially if your organization has several characteristic changes on a regular basis, which is not unheard of. We see that a lot. But 100% real time, and then after the fact, we actually can collect the pricing based off of that customized configuration. Moving back into Salesforce land, we can update the Salesforce quote and quote line items. So all of the CPQ reporting functionality, as far as the breakdown of bill of materials and printing out reports, all of those are going to be maintained within Salesforce, but we're actually allowing you to display the variant configuration bill of materials within Salesforce. So your reports and your quotes that you're delivering to your customers and clients are going to have the most up-to-date and correct configurations. So little bit of a unique process, but after we go into the quoting process, you'll see that there are additional product options that are to be selected. Those are going to be generated by us on runtime. So this is we want to stress that this is not a synchronization. We're actually getting these, fetching them in real time. So you're only maintaining the products inside of Salesforce that your salespeople or whomever's going to be doing the quoting is actually using, instead of bulk loading all of the data into Salesforce at any given time, which considering the complexity of variant configuration, that could be millions upon millions of records. As Scott said, we're only loading in the selected product options, which is really unique to us. And then after that, the CPQ process is going to be maintained and continued on just like you would a standard CPQ process. So we really wanted to leverage the power of CPQ because it is so powerful. We wanted the users to be comfortable in that environment and utilize that to its full potential. Just letting the business logic stay in SAP and just leveraging that from remote. So I inserted this just to let you know you are going to have to update the products that you're going to need variant configuration on. As part of implementation, we actually have a way to do this in an automated manner. So by analyzing your SAP system, we can actually take a look at what materials would need to be configured using Variant Configuration, and we'd be able to update those records inside of Salesforce. Just wanted to highlight the fact that we are going to need to be able to configure these products, and that's really what we want to highlight here. And also, due to the complexity of Variant Configuration and the also complex nature of Salesforce CPQ, wanted to highlight how we were doing the field mapping. So within Salesforce, we have product features and product options. Each characteristic, and you'll see in here, our demo example is building up a computer piece by piece. Each characteristic is going to be matched from SAP to a Salesforce product feature. The values for those characteristics are going to be mapped to product options, and this is going to make a lot more sense once you jump into the demo with me. But just wanted to lay out that there are a very large amount of ways that you could do this. This is just the way we chose to do it because it made sense for our situation. And utilizing the enosiX framework, you can actually map these however you see fit. This was just the obvious answer for the scenario we were in. So it can be configured however you all are using Variant Configuration. So without further ado, let's jump into Salesforce. So this is the standard product screen. As you can see, this is nothing's added or modified on this detail page. Standard product, it has setup as active and custom configuration required. What I do want to highlight is just so you know, there's no magic, or that we're not trying to fool you here. There's no product options or product features here, and these are what's going to give you that build of materials within your Salesforce CPQ roll-ups as far as pricing and reporting is concerned. What I have added here is an additional custom tab. As you can see, SAP Variant Config. This is a component that we've created that interacts directly with Salesforce, or with SAP directly using our framework. And we'll go ahead and go into this. So as you can see, we kind of have a linear model here, and obviously this is a simplistic example for what Variant Configuration is capable of. We were limited on time with this webinar, but we wanted to let you know that we are able to do any real scenario you've got with Variant Configuration. This is just an example we put together for this webinar. So let's take a look at what processor options we have for this Dell computer. So we'll select the model here, the small desktop, and each time you see the progress bar come up after we hit next here, we're actually interacting with SAP to fetch the additional characteristics and values that are valid for this Variant Configuration setup on this Dell computer. When we chose the Inspiron small desktop model, the processor values are modified and changed based off of that model. So this is a very linear setup, but again, we chose to do a simplistic example for this just because of the time duration we have for this meeting. The thing to stress here is each one of these options are directly related to the prior selection. So Inspiron, the small desktop is going to give you Celeron option versus the large desktop will give you a different option.
And I'd like to remind you that all those drop-down values are being rendered in real time from SAP. So if things change in SAP, as they always do, and characteristic values change, those changes are reflected in real time on the front end. So you don't have to rewrite your integrations as those values keep changing in the backend SAP environment.
Exactly, yeah. And that's true for all of our products, right? I mean, we've got a lot of other products, but today we want to focus on this Variant Configuration integration for CPQ. But yeah, Alex is 100% correct. Each one of these values that's coming back and the resulting pricing logic and configurations that are coming back are derived 100% real time live. So our three options have been selected. As you can see, the configuration has been finalized, and we just wanted to note here are the connection details to what customers, sales organization. We have this as a configurable option in the background. So this can be configured to any kind of sales scenario you have, but the important part to note here is that the costs and the pricing are derived based off of those values and the configuration that we put in. This is really important if you wanted to synchronize the price or cost information to the quote line item or the product standard price book entry. today we're just focusing on the configuration so we can do the roll-up of the bill of materials, but if you wanted to take that information, we're actually fetching that information in real time as well. So that is definitely an option. So let's go ahead and finalize this. Now, when I selected finalize, in the background, we went through and, like I told you when we were looking through those slides, for every characteristic that you see here, models, processors, and memory, we created a product feature, and then also for every single selected value we have here, we created a product option. And the reason we did this is it's really important for the bill of material reports that you're sending out to your clients if you want them to see how this example computer was made, for instance. They want to know what processor, what parts make up the whole. So it's necessary to actually have the product options built in there, and we are actually able to utilize those within CPQ. So let's jump over to CPQ quote screen, and as you can see right now, I've got a dummy quote here. It's got no value, no line items, and because we want to see the interaction between CPQ and Variant Configuration, we will add that product. So the Dell desktop computer product will be added, and because of how we configured that product, we have the configuration screen that pops up here, and you'll notice each one of these values were the ones that were selected during the Variant Configuration process. We don't have any associated costs with each one of these prices. We could bring that information back. We just have decided not to in this. But the important part to note is, like I displayed to you before on the product, the related records, these did not exist before we went through the process. So in real time, we're pulling those over. We're building up this build of materials, and we're able to save these and add them into our quote line. So as you can see here, we've got our quote line here. It's configurable, but we have the build of materials here. So we can save this, and from here on out, this would be the end of the process as far as we were concerned. From here on out, you would go in and take care of all the other CPQ needs with this, creating reports and everything else. So that's it for the demo.
Great, Eric. Thank you very much. So at this point, I'll pause here, and we'll give you a few minutes to put some questions in the Q&A bar, and then we can address those one at a time. It looks like I had a question that came in while it was coming up, and it said, other than CPQ, what other Salesforce products do you integrate with SAP?
Yeah, great question. So we do integrate into all order-to-cash objects within SAP, and also bleeding into customer service, service management, warranty management, contract management, as well as certain aspects of quality management, including service notifications. And on the front end, we are able to integrate with Salesforce Sales Cloud, Salesforce CPQ. We have integration with Service Cloud as well.
And I'd like to add on to that as well. Any aspect within the Salesforce cloud, we can actually integrate with through the process builder. So it's we can be either proactive or reactive with that approach, where any account or any kind of record that's created within Salesforce, we can, on a reactionary basis, create or update, modify, fetch data from Salesforce or from SAP in real time. So we're not limited to a certain subset of features within Salesforce. We can actually augment your Salesforce experience with any kind of SAP information you want or have.
Okay, great. We have another one here. What is a typical implementation time?
So that's a hard one to answer because everyone's SAP Variant configuration is set up in different ways, and the varying levels of complexity when we talk about variant configuration. But on an average, if I say a mid to high level complexity SAP VC, which is very similar to the demo environment that you saw, that is we're mastering the pricing in SAP and then also pulling in the VC rules from SAP, we're looking at about 12 to 16 weeks from start to finish. That's from install to go live.
Okay. The question here says, does it matter if the customer is using ABAP?
I would imagine that the customer is using ABAP. I mean, all of the SAP code is in ABAP. are you referring to like user exits and things of this sort? If that is the question, then the answer is yes, right? So most of our customers have written exit routines within pricing or have coded in a lot of logic into the VC rules, right? So as you're picking characteristic values, there are certain calculations happening in the back end. All of it is customized, and we do pick up all of that because we are actually picking up the logic at the application layer. We are not actually going down to the table and field values. We are picking up the entire business process logic at the application layer.
Okay. Let's see. Is there a limit to the VC levels? I misread that here. Is there a limit to the VC levels the solution can handle?
No, not at all. So if you have nested K-mats, if you have configured items nested within other configured items, we can handle all of that. The demo that you saw is very simplistic. It was very linear in nature, where we just stepped through the process. But we realized that in variant configuration, there are many different ways that the product can be configured. You may not start with the base K-mat. You may start with the FERT. You may go across the characteristic values in different sequences. So we can manage all of that complexity for sure.
Another question: are the SAP calls counting against my remote SF call limits?
Yeah, I'll take that one. No, these calls are outbound, the 100% outbound from or originating from Salesforce. Your API call limitations are going to be enforced against inbound calls. So if you had an external application like a mobile app or a web service that was calling into Salesforce, that's when your API limitation counts are going to be counted against. But because we're always going outbound, even if we're pulling back information in a synchronous way, it's not going to count against your limits.
Yeah, so this is a single web service that we are exposing from SAP that is being consumed by Salesforce via HTTPS.
Okay. Another question: how about security? I guess you need access through the firewall to get access to SAP ERP system.
Yeah, so typically the way our customers set this up, I mean, this would be no different than going from any cloud-based environment to your SAP environment. We typically see customers put in a reverse proxy between the two systems, maybe one inside the DMZ, one outside the DMZ. And then you could also have SSL certificates on both sides. Eric, do you want to elaborate on that? Because
yeah, you can install mutual SSL certificates. So essentially, your SAP server would know with 100% confidence that it's only your secure instance of Salesforce that you're connecting to, because those certificates are generated by Salesforce. So we've installed on several customers' systems now a SSL cert on both sides, just to ensure that connection is mutually secure on both sides. Beyond that, 100% of the communication between the two systems is via HTTPS. So the traffic is essentially tunneled over the internet. There's 100% security between the two systems, and because we're enforcing all of your SAP rules as far as user authentication and authorization, both on the Salesforce side, your users are only going to be able to do whatever they would be able to do on the SAP side as well. So essentially, both systems know that it's the other system, and it is your instance of the other system, and your users are going to be enforced at that user level as far as permissions are concerned.
Another question: SAP is mandating that customers purchase additional licenses for every external user that can make a call in SAP to retrieve or update data.
So yeah, so we actually came away from Sapphire this year. There was some, and we actually spoke to some senior level SAP executives. So we realized that there is indirect licensing for accessing SAP this way. It is no different from any other. Even if you're accessing via middleware, SAP says that you owe them a license. If it's a net new user accessing that SAP data. The advantage of the way we are architected is that if you're using our product to only query SAP and you're not moving the data out of SAP, then SAP says you're covered by the current software licenses that you have. So if you're exporting that information out of SAP, which is typical in an ETL situation, then you owe them the license. The way our solution is architected is that we are accessing the data at its source. The data never is moving out of the SAP landscape. So if you're using it only for querying and not for updating, then you actually do not need any additional SAP licenses.
But if I were to summarize, I would say we encourage all clients to talk to SAP and their rep directly.
For sure.
It typically has not been an issue in preventing this from moving forward. I've got one more in case some other ones come in. Can we configure the product starting with characteristics in a random sequence?
Yeah, so that's going back to the point I was making about the demo being was very linear, right? We stepped you through the product configuration. But in reality, you could actually start with, say, the processing power, right? You could say, hey, I want to make sure that my computer has, this sort of a processor. Show me what models of computer can support or have that capability to house this sort of a processor. So yes, it can go in many different directions. It doesn't have to be linear, and you could step through the characteristics in whatever sequence makes sense for your business process.
And I'd like to add on to that as well. We only showed drop downs as possible values for entry in each one of those values and characteristics. We have capabilities beyond this. We just wanted to make the example simple and understandable for this webinar. So if you have a more complex scenario where you have text input or possibly you have characteristics that aren't required, we can accommodate those as well.
Yeah, and also any error messages that SAP will throw out. So if you're going to step through the characteristics in a non-linear way, and you're making certain product combinations that are violating some constraint rules, then as those error messages that SAP throws out would be rendered in real time in the front-end Salesforce. And you can also handle those error messages in a probably a different way than SAP is putting them out there. So you get an opportunity now to simplify that error message and maybe provide some guidance to the person who is doing the configuration on the front end to actually give them the direction as to what the right combination would be or why that constraint is being violated.
And one more, just to further this, that those constraints are actually checked both at the time of input. So when we're actually selecting those products, it's being checked and enforced by SAP. But additionally, when you go through and use the pricing calculator aspect of the Salesforce CPQ system, we're actually plugging into that as well. And at the time in which we are calculating the price, we're looking at it to see if it's a valid configuration for the given material as well. So it's not only checked initially, it's checked before you're going to send it off to your customer.
Actually, while we were talking, we got another question. What about conflicts during configuration?
Yeah, so exactly. So all those conflicts, all those constraints are handled in real time, like we were saying. So as you're stepping through the configuration, if you make any choices that are conflicting with each other, if those rules are set up in SAP, they're adhered to in real time in the front-end Salesforce as well.
Great.
Without having to duplicate it, obviously, because we're accessing those rules at its source.
Awesome. So at this time, I think we're out of questions. Our contact information is available. We will send out the slides to everybody that participated today and include a recording of the webinar. Thank you again for your time. If you wish to discuss further, please feel free to reach out to myself or Eric or Alex, and we'd be happy to help. Thanks again, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Thank you all.
Thank you.